Let me take a wild guess. Many of you are currently feeling a bit like me. You're sad because Pope Francis has died, not least because he's one of the few global figures who has taken a stand against Israel's genocide. But you will also be fairly nauseated, let's put it that way, because of the perpetrators of this monstrous crime, as well as those who are complicit, taking part in the public mourning of the Pope and erasing what he actually stood for. This is a form of killing someone for the second time over, of sanitizing them, of airbrushing who they really were, of almost turning them into somebody else in order to protect the powerful from accountability. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, of course, went to see the Pope on Easter Sunday.
Pray for you every day. God bless you. So good to see you. Good morning. How are you?
Fine, yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I've not been feeling great, but it's good to see you in better health.
The next day, the Pope was dead. Here is Donald Trump standing on the White House balcony along with his wife and a giant Easter bunny.
I just signed an executive order putting the flags of our country, all of them, all federal flags and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis. So he was a good man.
A good man, says Trump. Well, the Pope, of course, had rather different views about the US president. When Trump proposed his notorious wall along the US-Mexico border, the Pope declared, "A person who thinks only about building walls, wherever they may be, and not building bridges, is not Christian." And in his last Easter Sunday address, he declared, "How much contempt is stirred up at times towards the vulnerable, the marginalised and migrants. On this day, I would like all of us to hope anew and to revive our trust in others, including those who are different from ourselves, or who come from distant lands bringing unfamiliar customs, ways of life and ideas." Well, given much of Trump at his very core is about stirring up contempt towards the vulnerable, the marginalised, specifically migrants, indeed those from distant lands, Trump was, of course, mourning someone who held his brand of politics with total contempt. But it's the genocide facilitated by Western politicians and media outlets which the Pope damned, which makes all of this so nauseating. Over the last 18 months, Pope Francis rang the only Catholic church in Gaza every day to offer solidarity and prayers to share in their suffering. In his last Easter address, just before his death, he said to worshippers, "I think of the people of Gaza and its Christian community in particular, where the terrible conflict continues to cause death and destruction and to create a dramatic and deplorable humanitarian situation." In his Christian address of 2023, he condemned unarmed civilians being bombed and shot, the killing and injuring of civilians by Israeli snipers.
Molto gravi e dolorose. Civili inermi sono oggetto di bombardamenti e spari. E questo è avvenuto persino all'interno del complesso parrocchiale della Santa Famiglia, dove non ci sono terroristi, ma famiglie, bambini, persone malate con disabilità, suore. Una mamma e sua figlia, la signora Navda Khalil Anton e la figlia Samar Qamar Anton, sono state uccise e altre persone ferite dai tiratori scelti mentre andavano in bagno. È stata danneggiata la casa delle suore di Madre Teresa, colpito il loro generatore. Qualcuno dice è il terrorismo, è la guerra. Sì, è la guerra, è il terrorismo.
A crucial point he made there was calling Israel's onslaught terrorism. In his final book, he wrote, "According to some experts, what is happening in Gaza has the characteristics of a genocide. It should be carefully investigated to determine whether it fits into the technical definition formulated by jurists and international bodies." Now, note what Joe Biden said. He's the second Catholic president in US history, but also one of the chief architects of Israel's genocide. "He commanded us to fight for peace," says the US president, who handed Israel around £26 billion worth of military aid to bomb and slaughter, kill, who offered diplomatic support and political cover to Israel, who helped whitewash and suppress Israel's war crimes. He promoted, according to Biden, an end to poverty and suffering across the globe, says the president, who helped expand that suffering by facilitating the mass extermination of tens of thousands of Palestinians, mostly women, children and the elderly, as well as the mass destruction of homes, hospitals, schools, libraries, mosques and indeed churches. What of Keir Starmer, who declared Pope Francis was a pope for the poor, the downtrodden and the forgotten. The same British Prime Minister who stripped the winter fuel payment from so many vulnerable pensioners and then launched an assault on disability benefits, which is predicted to drive up to 400,000 Britons into poverty. Starmer noted Pope Francis's work with Christians around the world facing war, famine, persecution and poverty. Unsurprisingly, he didn't mention how the Pope rang Gaza's only Catholic church every day to offer solidarity and prayers, or how he rightly feared for a Christian community that faces erasure after having lived in Gaza for over 1,600 years. Indeed, Starmer talks there about the suffering of Christians, suffering he's helping to facilitate, like the Israeli attack on Gaza's Church of St. Porphyrius, or the recent attack on the Anglican Al-Ali Arab Baptist Hospital, or the butchery of many Christians, like when an elderly woman and her daughter were shot dead by an Israeli sniper in the Holy Family Church on the eve of Christmas 2023. That was the very church the Pope rang each day, and its school was attacked by the Israeli military last July. And that's to say nothing of the tens of thousands of Palestinian Christians in the West Bank languishing under a brutal and illegal Israeli occupation, who faced a crackdown over Easter as they sought to observe their faith. The Pope condemned death and destruction in Gaza, and yet that death and destruction in part is being rained down by F-35 jets. Guess who's ensuring those F-35 jets are being supplied with crucial components? The British government, led by Keir Starmer. The Pope condemned these horrors, and yet Starmer's government can't describe a single Israeli war crime for what it is, a war crime. When the Foreign Secretary, himself a craven, cowardly, unprincipled man, described Israel's blockade of literally anything and everything, entering Gaza for what it is, a violation of international humanitarian law, Starmer's goons ordered him to U-turn, which he did as a pliant Foreign Secretary. After all, calling this monstrosity out for what it is would mean taking action, specifically imposing sanctions on Israel. The Pope, who spoke out against this suffering, who spoke of the humanitarian disaster, Keir Starmer talks about famine, Christians suffering famine, and that includes the Christians of Gaza suffering a famine at the hands of an onslaught Britain has facilitated. Indeed, Israel, at least, generally speaking, had the rare good judgment of shutting up. Originally, its official Twitter account, which functions like a troll account, frankly, tweeted, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis, may his memory be a blessing." That was then, wisely, abruptly deleted, clearly because of the Pope's stance against Israel's genocide. Benjamin Netanyahu himself said nothing. Let's hope that sets something of a precedent. I actually think there's something commendable about the response of the far-right US politician Marjorie Taylor Greene. Not a sentence you'll hear me normally utter, don't get used to it. She tweeted, "Today there were major shifts in global leadership. Evil is being defeated by the hand of God." Don't get me wrong, that's an utterly repellent tweet. But is it any more offensive than helping to facilitate a monstrous crime? And then when somebody who used their position to speak out against that monstrous crime dies, erasing their courageous stand in order to protect yourself. Take the New York Times. There wasn't a single mention of Palestine or Gaza in its obituary of the Pope. Same for the Washington Post. Obviously completely and utterly absurd. This is what they do to those public figures who resisted the status quo in their time and have too much respect to simply traduce. They try and erase what they actually really stood for. What is true is this: there is a tidal wave of McCarthyism sweeping the Western world, the most extreme assault on free speech there for 7 decades, with those who oppose Israel's genocide being deplatformed, threatened, sacked, expelled from universities, assaulted by police officers, arrested, imprisoned, and now even facing deportation. But the one person you can't cancel is the Pope. That isn't to say there aren't criticism to be had of the Pope or indeed the Catholic Church, but what matters here is the truth. Pope Francis spoke out against one of the great crimes of our age. Those now praising him are erasing that truth because it damns them. Well, one of the ways we can honour the Pope is to keep speaking out against this genocide and make sure that those praising the Pope while erasing what he stood for are held to account, and that one day there is finally justice for what they have done. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts and your comments. Help us take on the pro-genocide media, which is currently erasing the legacy of the Pope for completely self-serving reasons at patreon.com/OwenJones84. Do share the video. Leave your comments. Love to hear what you think. Listen to the podcast. I'll speak to you in a bit.